Even before we take our first breath, we begin a journey that will last a lifetime, the process of human development. At each step in the process, we must meet specific milestones in order to develop fully as a human being. As you study child development, keep these 5 basic principles in mind. First, development is similar for everyone. We all follow the same developmental patterns. But while similar, development is also highly individualized. Each of us develops in our own unique way at our own pace. Third, all development builds on earlier learning. Individualized. Keep these 5 basic principles in mind. First, development is similar for everyone. We all follow the same developmental patterns. But while similar, development is also highly individualized. Each of us develops in our own unique way at our own pace. Third, all development builds on earlier learning. Fourth, the different areas of development, physical, emotional, social, and intellectual, they're all interrelated. Finally, development is continuous throughout life. In a baby's first 12 months, development occurs faster than at any other time of life. The adults in a baby's life, parents and other caregivers such as family and friends and daycare workers, greatly influence how well that infant successfully meets the first year's developmental milestones.
That first year is a time of tremendous growth and development, physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, and how the caregiver or the parent responds to the child during that time really sets the foundation for their later learning.
In this program, Part 2 in a series on child development will take you through some of the major developmental milestones the first year of life. And we'll show you how you can best help the infants in your care achieve each milestone successfully to help each child reach his or her full potential. Physical development is different from growth. Your baby will show remarkable increases in weight and height in the first year, and these are good indicators to know whether your child is growing in a healthy way. But physical development refers to physical skills that an infant acquires during the first year. There are 3 basic patterns to an infant's physical development. Babies are said to develop head to foot, meaning that the baby first learns how to control her head, followed by the trunk and arms, and finally the legs and feet. Near to far is a second pattern of infant development, referring to baby skills starting close in
when they begin to be able to move around on their own. So when you talk about crawling, scooting, sitting up, then they begin to explore beyond the self. So near to far, you're talking about the ability to move out of the one realm of self.
One of the first things they may try to do is get their hand up to their mouth. Maybe one day accidentally they'll get it all the way up and they may bonk themselves in the head or hit themselves in the mouth. That's like, I think I learned something.
Finally, infants' physical development always follows a pattern from the simple to the more complex.
They start with very large motor movements and refine those to smaller muscle or motor movements as they become better at it.
Yum!
Then you begin to look at how development of the gross motor is connected to the environment. So the cause and effect. How can I interact with my environment and change it? A child who's crawling can reach out for objects and move them, say a ball that rolls across the floor when they touch it. A child that's learning to walk or to pull up can move along something. A child who's moving into toddlerhood, where they're actually able to push a trike or a riding toy, then they start realizing that everything from their mouth that blows bubbles to their toes that can wiggle in the sand or kick a ball are involved in interacting with their environment.
One of the most important physical development tasks an infant has in the first year of life, and one which greatly impacts a child's future, is the development of the brain. A newborn has most of the brain cells that she needs, but she must still grow essential connections between those cells, called synapses, in order to be normal and healthy. These connections are the keys to learning and remembering. Every experience the baby has contributes to creating new synapses. Cells that are not used to create synapses will die. So while genetics certainly plays a part in how intelligent a child grows to be, his environment plays an equally important role.
The research has shown that 80% of the brain is developed by age 3. 50% is developed by 6 months. The stimulation from the environment helps to prepare the child for that. The constant talking, the constant interacting. Now, if there is no stimulation or very little stimulation, research has shown that children will not react later to their environment.
Touching, being responded to, talking, and listening that goes on between the adult caregiver and the child is very important in making those connections in the brain.
So what can parents and caretakers do to help develop their baby's brain? Perhaps not surprisingly, the most effective actions are those that usually come most naturally.
Let's get that. And what's in your fingers?
The number one thing is relationships. Again, touch, being responded to, picking up on cues, knowing that they are safe. All of those things allow the brain to develop.
One of the things you need to do is set up an environment that's inviting and welcoming, making sure that there are things that the children want to explore, that they can be curious about.
As the parent or primary caregiver of an infant, you are the most important person in your baby's life.
You see the child start to look around, or you can see that the child ready to see something moving or something stimulating, or you to see the child start to reach out for some toys. So those kind of things that I think the caregivers or the parents have to be able to observe and be able to provide what they need.
What are some other ways that parents and caregivers can help make sure their infants achieve their first developmental milestones? First, create the right environment for the infant, one that is safe yet stimulating.
Kids do need to be safe, and that's always the bottom line, their welfare, their physical and emotional safety. What you have to do is figure out, how can I set the environment up so that there is the stimulation, there is the novelty and the newness and the poke at them to be curious, and at the same time keep things safe.
Infants also need to be kept warm, dry, well-fed, and well-rested.
Nutrition is very important. That's a foundation that is being set for later growth and development, and children who are not growing properly can't develop properly. If they aren't getting the right kind of nutrition that helps their bones grow, for example, and their muscles develop properly, then their motor development is going to be impacted. If they're not getting enough sleep, that may impact their ability to learn about the world around them or to build relationships with people.
You can also help your baby by being informed about the stages of child development.
Alex, you want to sit down and say hi to Dimitri? There.
I believe that the teachers and the parents can help the children develop by providing the environment and all the toys that they need to help them develop. But they also have to know the stage of development of that child.
When we talk about emotional and social development, we're referring to the process of learning to recognize and express feelings, to establish an identity as a unique person, and to interact with, attach to, and express oneself with others. Psychologist Erik Erikson identified the primary emotional tasks of each of the various stages of child development.
If you take Erikson's theories about psychosocial development and that whole idea that trust versus mistrust is the first thing that babies work on, as they get a little bit older, they're starting to work on the autonomy versus shame and doubt.
Oh, you just heard the word no, 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 and it scared you.
Infants that don't learn to trust and don't get what they need to attach to at least one caregiver will not develop intellectually, emotionally, socially, and even physically as they should, a condition known as failure to thrive.
Children become attached to those people who care for them on a regular basis, who they build a relationship with. And parents are always the most significant person in a baby's life. Nobody can ever take the place of a parent. But a caregiver or a teacher can certainly be one of those significant people who has a very strong relationship with that child and understands that child.
There are many simple things that caregivers and parents can do to help their babies develop very healthy feelings about themselves. Research has been able to prove that the natural things that mothers and some caregivers do are the food that the children need in order to develop healthy personalities. One thing is to mention the baby's name, tell the baby what she is doing. For example, now I'm changing your diaper and I know you're hungry, but let's make sure that you're dry and comfortable before I feed you. And then while feeding the baby, the mother can say, "Oh, you're so beautiful. I'm so glad that you're my baby," and just smile to the baby.
Tending to an infant's needs on the baby schedule, not the adults, is a primary way to help the baby develop trust.
The physical environment also involves the teacher being physically available for the child when they're ready. Infants knowing that if I'm crying, somebody's going to pick me up and find out what my needs are. They're not just going to ignore me. They're going to ask me, "Oh, are you hungry?" They're going to ask me, "Are you sleepy?" instead of just going through the motions.
Your friend's trying to get out too. Your friend's trying to get out too.
Some adults worry about spoiling a baby by tending to her immediately when she cries and try to put the baby on a rigid schedule.
I personally don't believe that you can spoil a baby. There's needs that need to be met in certain orders, and if a child needs you to hold them because they are not yet secure in your environment, then that's what your job is as a caregiver, is to make that child feel secure and emotionally set so he can develop his social skills, emotional stability throughout his next few months and years of life.
Okay now? Are you okay now? You're all right. You're all right.
Babies that are developing normally from an emotional and social standpoint will, as they grow, learn to express a wide range of emotions. Knowledge of child development can help parents and caregivers alike as infants navigate their emotional and social milestones.
If you're reaching the 12-month stage, separation anxiety comes in. With some children that happens, and the parents often say, "Well, he wasn't crying before. Why is he crying now?" Well, that's just a developmental stage that occurs.
You want one of these?
As babies reach 12 months and older, their emotional and social development becomes evident to experienced caregivers.
You want to go outside too?
It's a beautiful thing when children come to the door and there's a big smile. They're ready to come into your environment and they're ready to greet you, and that's the security that's given to the parents as well.
Babies begin the process of learning even before they are born. The first 3 years may be the most important in a child's intellectual development, as that is the time that the foundation for all future learning is put in place.
Between 0 and 2, the child has been prepared for learning because we have created that kind of atmosphere where the child would feel motivated to even learn anything that is given.
The sense of trust that the baby develops and the physical development of the brain both contribute to the child's intellectual development. The work of Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist, contributed greatly to our understanding of how these factors interact.
If we have an atmosphere of trust, then we create an atmosphere for learning. Piaget believed that intellectually children need to feel comfortable and they need to trust their caregivers or teachers before they can learn. And that helps to prepare the brain for learning.
In the first year, a baby develops intellectually at an incredible pace in 4 key areas. Remembering. Babies quickly develop the ability to recall people, places, and things.
Yeah, see, your big brother gave you a flower.
Making associations. When a parent or caregiver picks up a crying baby and the baby stops crying, that infant has remembered that person and the act of being picked up and associates it with comfort.
You're okay.
Understanding cause and effect. As babies get older, they begin to understand that they have the power to make certain things happen. Paying attention. The older that children get, the longer their attention span. A newborn can pay attention to an activity for a very short time, while an older baby will enjoy play for much longer.
Where's the clown?
How can parents and caregivers make a difference in an infant's intellectual development?
Do you see the colors in there? Do you see the colors? They're blue and yellow and white.
They need to know how to respond to babies and how to recognize and appreciate all of the different things that children are learning. It may not be learning in a traditional sense, and that's why it's so important that they understand that reaching out and grabbing a toy is a developmental milestone, and they need to celebrate that as much as they would a child learning how to count to 3 at a later age.
Actually, Alex is eating. Are they making it into your mouth?
Children who are in a language-rich environment where the caregiver, the adults, other children really help them to listen to those sounds and to feel important because they are being focused on or they are listening to the language around them.
Alex wants another gram. He said, I'll swap you the pears for the grams, Adam. Right? Dimitri can have another gram. All done. I'm going to put this away.
Remember that children learn language very early. Even though they cannot produce the language, they can listen to what is being said. They can receive the language. And these are the kinds of stimulations that help the brain to grow.
Here comes the crawler.
Intellectually, the environment needs to be a stimulating place. Mobiles are wonderful for that age. Response toys, once they start sitting up and can reach and make something happen, they realize they have an impact on their environment, and bang, those synapses go, wow.
Toys and games for the first year should start with things that allow babies to watch and listen and graduate to things to touch, shake, push, pull, or otherwise manipulate.
Something like peekaboo, which is a very old, traditional type game that still works very well for helping children learn very basic skills, like when somebody goes away, they come back. That's an important developmental milestone for infants. They have to learn that when something leaves, it still exists. When something is hidden, it still exists.
Piaget was the first to identify the developmental milestone called object permanence, the notion that something still exists when it is hidden. He also documented how babies and toddlers build on earlier learning experiences.
The child who's been experiencing blocks since babyhood has an advantage. And the same goes for manipulatives, which would be like the Lego blocks and the puzzles. And the same goes for books, because that child has been exposed to those materials.
Those are balls, you're right.
Remember to keep activities at a level the baby can manage, and don't overstimulate an infant with too much, too soon, or too long a time of activity.
You need to make sure first that your materials are developmentally appropriate. Too many materials can overwhelm a child.
Are you going to talk? Say hi.
The beauty about this is that interaction and stimulation in the environment coming primarily from the caregiver.
There we go.
It impacts the child because as they go to the next level of their development, they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel secure, and they're going to be able to reach out and to explore and to trust and to grow, and all of that plays an important role for the child, makes them more stable, more secure, and emotionally set.
Regardless of what our backgrounds are, I really have to believe strongly that the environment with the caregiver as an important part of it can create not a genius baby, but a healthy child who feels good about himself, has a healthy self-esteem, and also who is prepared for learning.
Think of yourself as a tour guide for your baby, making her journey through her first year a safe, healthy, and stimulating time. If you do, she will be well prepared to enter the next stage of development, the toddler years.